Good evening. This is Steve, KK4RVR, back again. I had a request on the manual programming video. Someone wanted to see about how you would program the radio with Chirp. And I also would like to thank this individual because I recognize the name, and they are also a member of the Anytone AT5888UV forum that I'm also running. So what I'm going to do with this video real shortly is show you the difference between running or programming the radio with Chirp and programming the radio with the Anytone software that came with it, which has its disadvantages to Chirp, but in some ways has more of an advantage than Chirp. With Chirp, quick example, with my Baofeng, and it's a UV5R Pro, which really doesn't make a difference. It's a UV5R, just a different casing in a way. For the most part, the casing's slightly different. With Chirp, I can program all the radio features and some that you can't get to from the menus. With the Anytone, on the other hand, I cannot change any of the system settings in it. The only thing that I can do with Chirp and the Anytone, right there, is frequencies, the memories. That's the only thing that I can mess with as of this point in recording. I mean, the developer of Chirp might eventually get around to expanding it to where you can modify the system settings or the radio settings, but he hasn't. It's not done yet. So keep track with it, and he might actually get around to it or be able to do it. And I can tell you now, once Chirp gets the ability to do the system settings for this radio, I will switch over to that completely. I run a dual boot computer system, so for programming my Baofeng, to prevent myself, because unfortunately, and I know this is a little off subject, but for using my Baofeng cable on my computer here, I prefer to run it inside of Linux. I don't have the software problems. Unfortunately, I got one of the cloned ones, and it gives you the driver problems of Windows 7, Windows 8. You always have to reinstall the old version of the software or the driver for it. It works. It's just a pain to have to deal with. So I do all of my Chirp software programming for my Baofeng in Linux. Now, I can use the Anytone radio, the chip on it, the programming cable, which is actually hooked up. I have it hooked up to an extension. It's good. Plug and play in Windows didn't give me a bit of a problem. I actually have it hooked up to the radio at the moment. But and that doesn't give me a problem. I can use Chirp, and the stock software in Windows works just fine. Obviously, the stock software works only in Windows, really, and you can't do it in Linux. Not even going to experiment it in Wine. But what I'm going to do is just a short one way and show how it works in both of them, and give the advantages and disadvantages. Typical thing. So now, on to the programming. Okay, for this part, I'm going to show you briefly, let's see, loading up the stock software. And it comes with its own preset stuff set in it. But click on Read from Radio. And do you wish to continue? Okay. It's going to go through this twice. First time's faster than the second one. I think if I'm guessing correctly, the first one is just the system settings. The second one's the actual frequencies. And then once that completes, read data completed. And now I have all of my program settings from the radio. And yes, there are gaps. I have my stuff somewhat organized in a way. Let's say this section right here, that's all 2 meter and 70 centimeter simplex frequencies, or since they've been channelized, I'll just call them the simplex channels. And then down at the bottom, NOAA weather and my 2 local police department frequencies that I listen to. So, and then up top, 2 meter, this section here, 70 centimeter repeaters. And this section up at the top, the first 36 are 2 meters. I can't receive all of these, however, I did program all of the repeaters within like a 50 to 75 mile range of my QTH here. So if I do ever put the radio in the car and I travel around the area, I already have those repeaters in the memory, so I don't have to reprogram it for traveling around the area. So but there's a lot of things in here. You have the normal channel edit, the limit channel edit. I've never messed with it, so I have no clue. Then you have the hyper channels 1 and hyper channels 2. I have never messed with those. That is something that I don't think I will ever use. Then you have functions set up, and this is where Chirp does not follow in line. This is what I was speaking of. Starting display. When you turn the radio on, it will display this on the left VFO side, and that is my call sign. The other side automatically does Anytone. That's all it states. And you have your various settings from display mode, squelch level, or left squelch level, right squelch level. You can have independent squelch levels per left and right VFO. Hyper main, I don't understand that one. Oh, channel 1 or 2. Scan pause time. I think mine, CO means waits for a couple seconds, about 2 or 3 seconds after the signal's dropped. Scan mode, memory, or priority scan. I never messed with that one either. Back color, red, green, and blue. You can actually adjust your screen fade from in here. Sometimes I have this setting saved to my computer, so if I ever start messing with the colors and I just want it back to the way I had it, I can either just re-upload it to the radio or load this and, oh, okay, red's 32, 7's green, or green is 7 and blue is 1. And then I can just go ahead and reset them manually. Sometimes it's easier to just do it by hand than go through all the trouble of hooking up the programming cable and all that good stuff. So for me, I do some stuff manually. There's a bunch of other things. See, the timeout timer. Most repeaters do a 3-minute timeout, so you have the radio. Mine's set to 3 minutes. You can go all the way up to a 30-minute timeout before this radio will discontinue transmission. Granted, it's got a fan on it, but I wouldn't want to test running this thing wide open on full power for 30 minutes. That fan just might not be enough. You might have to add an extra if you were going into anything like that. Push-to-talk key lock. You can actually set this thing to do right side, left side, or both, to where you cannot push-to-talk on any frequency to make this just a receiving-only radio. You can also do that by just disconnecting the microphone. The auto power off, key light level. The radio has a dimmer. You can adjust the light setting or how bright the keys are on the DTMF pad. And mine's all the way open, 32. Long key time, that I don't understand. Haven't messed with it. Not sure about the deputy channel mute. The clock shift, that's for shifting the clock speed on the radio if you get harmonics or anything like that. Mine's currently set to off. I haven't had any issues with it set to either off or on, so I'm not going to shift the clock on it unless I absolutely have to. Not entirely sure of key mode, but it says 1 and 2. Oh, That's for the front faceplate. You can read about that one in the instruction manual. Squelch key function for the TV/squelch button on the radio itself, the top right. You have squelch off, or if you hold it, squelch off momentary. I think if I were to push it now, my radio is on. Yeah. Push and hold it for like a second or two and it'll turn to squelch off, because I have mine set to squelch off. The tail eliminator type, I don't have one. I don't have it enabled. The beep tone value, you know, if every time you push a key it'll beep. My beep's turned off completely, because even with the volume turned down and the beep tone on low, it's still too loud at night. And then your programming key functions for like keys A, B, C, and D on the microphone. Mine are in order from scan, power, reverse, and then VFO and memory. Left squelch level, or left RF squelch level, right RF squelch level, and then defined scramblers. I've never messed with those. It also has an ability for a bootstrap password. In other words, I think what that's for is you can have a password enabled on the radio when you turn it on, and it will actually just it will be locked until you punch in the password. And then these other things, like, alright, down here, prohibit the initialization. No clue. I haven't touched it. I don't want to. It does not sound like a good thing I would want to mess with. Beep. That's the beeping for when you press keys on the keypad or on the radio, and I have them turned off. External speaker, I don't use one, so that's off. And then eliminate squelch tail when no CTCSS or DCS signaling. That's turned off. I don't have a problem with that. And then DTMF, you go into the next settings, transmitting time, self-ID. I've never really messed with this. This is something for you to play with if you wish. Then you have the let's see. Oops, sorry. Cancel. Then you have the two-tone setting, which I don't think we would ever for ham operation. You don't need it. 5-tone. I don't think you would need that either. Emergency information. If you were to enable the alarm on it. Alarm times. That's how many times you have it run. Assigned channel or selected channel. I don't know the emergency channel. And then emergency cycle continuous. I've never messed with that. Communication note. Oh, yeah, with the radio, you can program call signs and names. You can actually do it in the radio. I've never done it. I know it's possible, but I've never tried it. Note. I think you can save notes in the radio and import them through the software. And then it has a thing for embedded message. And there's nothing in it. You can't edit it. Only thing it says on mine is radio type, frequency, date produced December 7th of 2013, version 1.01. Meaning when I got this radio, it came with the programming software, and you have version 1.00 and version 1.01. And it says not to use the older software with it, so I don't. So I mean, that's pretty much what you get with this software. You can, with the standard software that comes with the radio, if you do not get the software with the radio, go to Import Communications, and you can download their software from there. That would be the way to go, in my opinion. Now, for Chirp, full screen it here, radio download. Anytone. And this Chirp does take longer to download. I've noticed it does take longer for Chirp to download from the radio than the factory software. And we're still going. Sorry, I had to take a drink for a second. Ah, here we go. And now, here's all your programs from Chirp. It's pretty much the same thing. But when you go over, that's for memories, but when you go to settings, the only thing you get, display, frequency, channel or name, automatic power off, you know, half hour, 1 hour, hour and a half, all the way up to 12 hours. The welcome message you can do, and then beep enabled, which you can turn on or off, or sub-band mute off. In other words, if I'm transmitting on a 2 meter frequency, it will still actually receive and output a 70 centimeter frequency that's being listened to on the sub band, I guess you could call it. It will still play that through the speaker while you're transmitting on a 2 meter, or vice versa. Let's see, for TX, if you have it off, it'll work that way. If you have it for TX, it will only mute it when you transmit. If you have it set to only TX, what it'll do is you'll actually hear both frequency sides at the same time. For RX, what'll happen is you'll still be able to hear it while transmitting, but if your primary VFO is receiving a signal, it will cut that one off. It'll cut the other one off. And then for TX and RX, it'll shut it off when your primary band is receiving or transmitting. So I mainly just leave mine to TX, and then what'll happen is if I'll keep both of them at about the same volume level, and then if I decide I don't want to listen to the sub band, I just turn the volume down. So that's the way that usually works, and a lot of times I just keep the volume off. Currently at this point I have my radio set to for the sub-band display, it's showing the voltage that it's receiving from my power supply. So that's about it for that. With Chirp, what I do is, let's see, file, export. I can take all the frequencies as they're programmed in this radio and export them into a CFV file, and you'll see right here, I don't know how clear it'll show in the video, 4HT. Now I'll save it and it'll say it already exists, do you want to overwrite? Yes, overwrite. And now it's saved. So now all I have to do, and see where I'd mentioned my names, Richmond, Massanutten Peak, Madison, Amherst, Newmarket, and these are just a few of the repeaters in the area that I just named off. For this, in my HT, they're only programmed with call signs, and there's a few repeaters that share the same call sign because they're run by the same club or the same individual, but they're in way their distances between each other. Some of them I can't reach. So what I did was I just programmed as close as I could the location of them and left it at that. Now the HT hasn't been programmed with that, but now that I updated that file, the next time I hook up the HT and send the information to it, it will have the new channels updated. And for now, I do believe that's about all I can cover with it. Oh, sorry, I forgot one thing. Standard software, back to the standard software, you can actually take individual frequencies, like say, this one's Richmond. You can set certain ones to turn the compander on and off, or you can even tell it to block transmitting. You can tell it to run that frequency in reverse, which I wouldn't suggest, and then the talk around prevents you from using a repeater, if I remember correctly. You set your CT, CSS, and you can go into the main settings of it by just double clicking on the more, or when you're programming it, you just select each one individually, fill it in, press enter, that kind of thing, and then go that way. I believe the same goes for Chirp also. With Chirp, you can set it to skip, for skip and I think primary. for scanning. If you scroll down through it, you'll see I have a few of them that are set to skip. All but the 2 meter and 70 centimeter call channels are set to receive. The rest of them skip. And I have it set to skip the weather and police, because like I said, I usually run those on the second VFO exclusively, and I flip between the ones I want to listen to. And here lately, I've just been keeping it on weather. I have a police band scanner on the top shelf of the desk here, so that picks up all that good stuff. But now I think I've got it all. I don't think I missed anything. If I did, and you have any more questions, or would like me to go in more depth about anything, please go ahead and leave a comment and let me know, and I can try my best to go into a little bit more depth and detail about anything about the programming. But it's for the most part straightforward. If you know how to use Chirp, it works the same way with this radio. You just don't have as many of the settings that you can adjust for the radio itself. If you're not worried about that, then Chirp's a good way to go. It's easier to program the frequencies in Chirp in a way than it is to program them in the stock software that comes with the radio. Now, if you're worried about trying to do everything from one piece of software, use the stock software that you get with the radio, or that you download from Import Communications. And I have verified it. The software downloads from Import Communications is the same software that comes with the mini CD that was included with my programming cable. So I confirm they're the same thing. So I believe that is all I can do for this. Like I said, rate. I think it's rate. Subscribe, share it, like, all that good stuff. And like I said, if there's anything else that I can help somebody out with, just leave a comment, and I'll reply as soon as possible, and I try to make a new video as soon as possible as well. So 7 3s from KK4RVR. Have a good day.